We're going to call this meeting to order. Today is still Wednesday, July 15th. This is the Heritage Preservation Commission meeting. We'll start with the call to order. That's this. The public can submit comments that can be read at the dais by a staff member to the commission liaison. Send it to Lauren Clementino of Flagstaff, or L. Clementino at flagstaffaz.gov. And we did receive comments, and I thank the public for participating. It's exciting. Call to order. Notice of option to recess. We did option to recess into executive session, and thank you all for your patience. Roll call, please.
Duffy Westheimer.
Here.
Alec Overman.
Present.
Emily Dale.
Present.
Jesse Dominguez.
Here.
Alicia Hayes.
Present.
Jeannie Stevens.
Present.
Caitlin Stewart.
Present.
All right, thank you, everybody. Who would like to read the land acknowledgement?
I can do it. The Heritage Preservation Commission humbly acknowledges the ancestral homelands of this area's indigenous nations and original stewards. These lands, still inhabited by native descendants, border mountains sacred to indigenous peoples. We honor them, their legacies, their traditions, and their continued contributions. We celebrate their past, present, and future generations who will forever know this place as home.
Thank you, Commissioner Dale, using your professor voice. That's awesome. All right, now we also have the Heritage Preservation Commission purpose. If no one else wants to read it, I'm willing to read that one. Anyone want to? Okay.
The purpose of the Heritage Preservation Commission is to protect and enhance the cultural, historical, and archaeological heritage of the city of Flagstaff by recognizing, preserving, enhancing, and perpetuating the use of those objects, structures, sites, and landscape features that represent distinctive elements of the city's cultural, political, architectural, and archaeological history. The council finds and intends that preservation of the city's heritage is in the interest of the health, economic prosperity, education, cultural enrichment, and general welfare of the public. The commission implements the city's general plan and is implemented pursuant to the provisions, of the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966 as amended, the Certified Local Government Program, and Arizona State Statute providing the standards and procedures for heritage preservation.
Thank you, Commissioner Stevens. That takes us to item 5, open call to the public. At this time, any member of the public may address the commission on any subject within their jurisdiction that is not scheduled before the commission on this day. Due to the open meeting laws, the commission cannot discuss or act on items presented during this portion of the agenda. To address the commission on an item that is on the agenda, please wait for the chair to call for public comment at the time the item is heard, and be sure to submit your cards. Okay, so now we move to item 6, approval of the minutes. That was of both the executive session on June 17th, and we'll do the minutes for the commission meeting on the same day. Does anyone have any changes to make or addition?
I am listed, Commissioner Dale, as both present and absent at these meetings, and I was absent, so I would just like that to be reflected.
Nothing else? Okay, let's vote to approve the minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
With the amendment that I was not
With the
here.
amendment, thank you. Any opposed? No, I hear none, so it passes. So now we move to item 7, public hearing. A, 19 West Birch Avenue Certificate of Appropriateness. So we're opening this public hearing. The property information is 19 West Birch, 3 parcels, owned by Capri Flagstaff LLC and LaRue Retail LLC. So the requested action is to approve a certificate of appropriateness for design of new hotel and parking garage buildings. So we can, this is a complex issue, so I got.
Before we get into that, I apologize. I have to recuse myself. Commissioner Stewart needs to recuse himself.
Okay, so Commissioner Stewart just recused herself. So there is no detailed organization for this meeting. So if the rules of procedure for the council meetings work, I think we'll use them here. We might revise it a little bit when we get to our discussion. So we can start with the staff presentation which is limited to 10 minutes unless the commission gives you permission to speak longer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Lauren Clementino, Heritage Preservation Officer. So this is an amended presentation. As you remember, I presented to the commission in May when you first heard this item. So this is a abbreviated presentation based on all the information that I provided in May, and was also updated to reflect the commission's request for additional information and focus on that. So as you mentioned, we're here to review a certificate of appropriateness for design of new hotel and parking garage buildings on 3 parcels. And a quick overview of the applicability of a certificate of appropriateness. And again, we happy to go over any of this more in detail, but we covered the applicability and also walked through all of the approval criteria for approval in the May meeting. So in the interest of time, I'll just quickly pull it up here. Happy to answer any commission questions or go back to these items. Some limited project background, again, as you've been reviewing these items, but this is to construct a new hotel and parking garage at 19 West Birch Avenue, utilizing 3 parcels. These parcels are located within the downtown historic overlay zone, which is why a certificate of appropriateness is required. And the design review is subject to the design handbook for downtown Flagstaff. And to recap the commission's decision at the May meeting. So on May 20th, the commission reviewed a first submittal of the certificate of appropriateness application. The commission voted to request specific additional information regarding the design of the new hotel and parking garage buildings. The commission developed the following list of requested additional information regarding the design. And so these 3 bullet points are the specific information that the applicant was requested to come back with, and that is what the applicant has added to their application and is here to discuss today. So first, as it relates to the design guideline N2 of the design handbook, new buildings should appear similar in mass and scale with historic structures in the area. More information is requested to demonstrate that the proposed buildings are similar in mass and scale to the historic structures in the area. As it relates to design guideline N5, use building materials that are similar to those employed historically for all major surfaces. Consideration of use of a greater proportion of Malapai stone in the hotel design is requested, with a particular request to consider replacing the stucco or limestone tile on the columns with Malapai stone. And lastly, as it relates to potential impacts on the integrity of the downtown historic overlay zone and railroad addition historic district, consideration of the design's effect on integrity of feeling is requested. Use of a greater percentage of Malapai stone was used as an example by the commission in discussion of a design modification that could address retention of integrity of feeling. Consideration of integrity of feeling as it relates to walkability, pedestrian experience, and compatibility was also requested. And just a reminder, again, we're talking specifically about the design guidelines in the downtown handbook, and that is because we are within the downtown overlay zone, and this is the zoning code language, which sets up the nexus for design review of new buildings being subject to a certificate of appropriateness and subject to the specific design guidelines. And so now I'm pulling up design guideline N2. Last month, we went over all of the applicable design guidelines to the case, but the commission only found 2 that they wanted additional information on. So those are the only 2 that I'm going to focus on in the presentation, but I do have them all available as additional slides if I need to pull those up. So the summary for N2, new buildings should appear similar in mass and scale with historic structures in the area. And the 3 bullets below are additional description available in the design handbook for how this could be achieved. Where new building facades will be wider than those found traditionally, subdivide the surface into portions similar in scale to historic facades by varying setbacks, roof forms, and materials. Building heights should be within the range of buildings traditionally built downtown. In general, those are 2 to 4 stories in height. Maximum building height is 60 feet, however. Building heights should be within the range of buildings traditionally built downtown. And, oh, sorry, some of this repeated, but a maximum building height, and this does repeat in the handbook under a photo, and a maximum building height limit of 55 feet is recommended. So there is somewhat contrary language there. As you'll note, the recommendation is 4 stories and 55 feet. However, 60 feet is allowable by code and in the design guidelines. And so now discussion from the staff report. Much of this was in the original staff report reviewed in May with some revisions based on the new materials submitted. The hotel facade surface was subdivided through use of varying materials, including brick, malachite stone, stucco, and glass. The parking garage facade was also subdivided per the guidelines through varying materials, including brick and precast concrete that has 2 different treatments to it. And both are also subdivided via use of massing articulation or recesses to divide the facades. And again, in summary, although 55 feet is recommended, the downtown design handbook and the underlying zoning both allow for 60 feet, which both buildings are within. And in response to the commission's request at the May meeting, the applicant has provided additional materials which they will go over in their presentation on how it relates to mass and scale with other historic structures and non-historic structures in the area within the downtown historic overlay zone, and also provided written materials in your packet. And so again, N5 was the second specific design guideline that the commission asked for additional information on. And this is use of building materials that are similar to those employed historically for all major surfaces. The description in the design handbook is materials should be similar in appearance to those used historically. New materials may be used if their appearances are similar to those of the historic building materials, such as brick or native stone. Use finishes similar to historic buildings in the district. And it specifically calls out brick and stone as appropriate materials for large surfaces. And on buildings of the Route 66 era, stucco may also be considered. And information, again, that was in your packet and the staff report. So brick and stone are, as stated in the design guidelines, are appropriate materials for large surfaces. They are the primary, brick is the primary material for both buildings. Malachite stone is also a primary material for the hotel building. In response to the commission comments at the May meeting, the updated renderings in the second submittal show an increased use of malachite stone across the ground floor level of the hotel. And as the commission requested, it replaced the malachite, or it replaced the limestone material that was depicted in the first submittal meeting, those 2 specific requests by the commission. The design guidelines also state that new materials may be used if they mimic historic materials. The parking garage design employs use of sandblasted concrete to mimic masonry, and the hotel design employs use of hardy panels that mimic wood. Also calling out here in the Flagstaff zoning codes, architectural design standards, stucco and untreated concrete are considered appropriate as secondary materials, meaning that they are used in less than 25% of the facade. In my previous reviews, I asked the applicant to demonstrate those calculations on the plans, which they have in your packet, and they do meet, the provided calculations do meet the architectural design standards for those as secondary materials, and the primary material calculations for the brick and stone are also included. So to the integrity of feeling analysis that was requested by the commission, integrity of feeling is in the Heritage Preservation Code in the Cultural Resource Studies section. So feeling is one of the 7 aspects of integrity set forth by the National Register and also in the Heritage Preservation Code locally to determine integrity when evaluating a cultural resource in the context of a cultural resource study. And I put the definition in the cultural resource section of our code of what feeling is here in the middle, a property's expression of the aesthetic or historic sense of a particular period of time. It results from the presence of physical features that taken together convey the property's historic character. So that is the definition of feeling and how it its integrity is conveyed. And per, again, the cultural resource section of our code, major impacts to cultural resources and the determination of major impacts also looks at all 7 aspects of integrity, including feeling. So those are the specific places in our code where feeling can be pointed to. And so to the extent that feeling can be analyzed in the certificate of appropriateness section of our code for new construction, the proposed building and garage in staff opinion and in the staff report would not constitute a major impact to the downtown historic overlay zone or the nearby railroad addition historic district. Okay. Would the commission like me to finish my staff presentation? Yeah, okay. Well, note that I was not informed before the meeting that I had a 10-minute time limit. So, and so the applicant, per their commission request, submitted updated renderings in the second submittal that showed the increased use of Malapai stone, again, which was the specific commission request on how to address integrity of feeling. That is updated in the packet. The applicant also prepared a narrative response discussing walkability, compatibility, and the pedestrian experience as requested, and it plans to go through that in their presentation. So the staff recommendation is that a certificate of appropriateness for the design of the buildings be approved. It meets the downtown design handbook for downtown Flagstaff, and as such, it's appropriate to approve a certificate of appropriateness based on these findings. And the commission has these options. The commission can approve the certificate of appropriateness for the design. The commission could approve the certificate of appropriateness for the design with conditions related to additional information if necessary to resolve conditions of approval, or the commission can deny the application. And are there any questions at this stage? If not, we can invite the applicant up to do their presentation.
Any commissioners have questions? No. So now we can, as Lauren said, invite if the applicant would like to make a presentation following the council's rules of procedures, that you have 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. My name is Tyler Mark. I'm here presenting on behalf of the applicant, Jim O'Connell. So we'll start with the presentation here. The 3 topics of discussion, N2, N5, and the activation, integrity of feeling, as discussed by Lauren. So we'll start off with the design guideline N2. And the building should appear in similar in mass and scale with the historic structures in the area. So what we did is we actually obviously digitally planted this into Google Earth photos to give you a perspective on what the building will look like when it's completed in relation to buildings in the area, just for a sense of scale and mass. Again, as Lauren has mentioned, the property per the code meets the code requirements of 60 feet, and there is a bunch of horizontal articulations both on the garage and the hotel to meet those setback requirements. There's another view from the north, kind of puts it in perspective with the Residence Inn, the courthouse, also other structures nearby. You know, for us, it's kind of representative of the impact that the building does have on the downtown. It's not imposing. That's our perspective. So as Lauren mentioned, the hotel facade has been subdivided, brick, Malapai, limestone, stucco, glass. I believe in response to Alex's comment, adding much more Malapai to the hotel facade was incorporated. I'll show that photo here in just a little bit. Garage facade has been subdivided by using brick, precast, both sandblasted and smooth. And as I mentioned before, both buildings are subdivided using massing articulation recesses every so often as required by the code. So we have met all those requirements. And as mentioned before, the 55-foot height requirement is recommended. 60 feet is allowable. So we are meeting that max requirement at the 60 feet. So in response to Alex's request last time, we've redone the renderings of the hotel itself. What you'll see here, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but all of the ground floor is now Malpai. We feel that it actually, I think it looks great personally, but initially we had a lot more limestone tile there, I believe, and I think it breaks it up and gives a little bit of callback to the history of the building as it stands today. This is also another view from basically across the street from Birch from the north looking south. Figured we'd give you some more of the elevations just to give you a feel for what the rest of the building looks like. This is the south elevation, so if you're in the alley between us and CenturyLink, this is what you'd be looking at. It's a tight alley, but a lot of brick. There's hardy panel, there's limestone tile, a little bit of stucco up top. And this is from the east elevation, which would be the alley in between the garage and the hotel. Also kind of the same theme running along the brick and stucco looks. Garage renderings, we put these up here for the same reason. We want to show the articulation of the building, the massing, the scale. This building's only 4 to 4.5 stories tall, depending on what part of the garage you're in. A lot of brick, sandblasted, precast, and so a little bit of stucco on these bands up here up top. Again, just some elevations with the color palette. I wanted to give you guys a feel. These aren't quite as rendered as well as the other one, but if you look at the details, I put the call outs on here just so you guys could get a feel for what the garage looks like when it's completed. These are the east and west elevations. Again, the east elevation would be along LaRue. West elevation would be along the alley. Moving on to design guideline N5. And for us, N5 and N2 kind of overlap a little bit, but they're very similar in what they're requesting. So appropriate materials for large surfaces. Brick is the primary material for both buildings. Malpai and limestone are also used as primary on the hotel building. The design guidelines state that new materials may be used, as Lauren mentioned. We tried to limit that. Hardy panel, to me, I'm not a big fan of it, but it does reference back, to the feel of wood. And the garage itself being precast, it's awful difficult to integrate brick or stone, but we've done our best to maximize that and use sandblasted and painted textures to kind of break everything up. Again, as Lauren has mentioned, we have met the minimum requirements, or excuse me, maximum requirements of the secondary materials and met the minimum requirements of the primary materials. Activation, I think this was the biggest takeaway that I took from not only in discussing this with you guys last time, but also in reaching out to the public. I've met with the the Downtown Business Alliance on multiple occasions, also met with the city, just discussing like what the impact of these buildings will have on walkability, the feel of the pedestrian experience for somebody who's going to be walking along LaRue or Birch down the road. And we actually had multiple different meetings with the DBA to just try to get a feel for what was missed, right? What happened a year ago to now, and what can we do now at this point to try to mitigate that? So we talked a lot about, hey, could we stick retail in here? Could we change the building? Could we move the building? There's a lot of constraints on the site itself and just the way to get in and out of the garage itself. It's physically not possible to take the garage and put it where the hotel is. There's not enough space to get the alley and the dumpsters and everything else in there to get out of the garage if we moved it to where the hotel is. So that's the biggest constraint on why the garage is sitting where it's at. And if you looked at the overall site plan, you'll notice that the overall footprint of the property lines for the hotel is actually smaller than it is for the garage, and that's because of the exit lane. Yes.
Mr. Marks, thank you for all this information. Could you bring up a visual of that for us, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
So how we do that? Okay, so I think the civil plans will show you kind of what we're talking about here. So, okay, so what you're looking at here is the hotel. And I wish these were side by side, but you'll notice right here, there's an alleyway right here. As you progress to the east and we tie into the garage, you'll see this little step right here, goes like this. That creates the amount of space required to get out of the garage and still have the easement, this alley easement that is from the neighboring property and enough room for the dumpsters and the trash compactor. So physically, if we took this and tried to flop it over to the hotel, we wouldn't have this additional space right here. This this dimension right here really controls the fact that you can't get out of the garage if we put it where the hotel is. Physically not possible. So I think, did that answer the question you were looking for? Yeah, I kind of thought initially when somebody brought this up to me a couple of weeks ago, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. But then I looked at it and it's just physically not possible to get cars in and out. That's why the alley, as you're coming in off of Beaver, this is a one-way alley because two-way traffic won't fit. So that's what the constraint was. Jumping back.
Chair, if I may, could I ask Mr. Marks to clarify one more thing just so the commission knows? And you may also want to mention that the design per, I believe, previous city staff request as well as DBA request was that the entrance to and from the parking garage be from the alley and not from one of the primary streets to help with the pedestrian experience, which is also why they revised the design to get it to where it is here. And again, underscores why the request was from the alley for the pedestrian experience and why it's on that location.
Wait, Alicia, could you wait? Because they want us to identify who's speaking for people listening. So Commissioner Hayes.
Yes, I couldn't quite see as I leaned over where you were pointing with the cursor of the entrances. Can you show that again?
Oh.
So you're coming in from which street
So you're
and heading which direction?
So you're to get into the garage, to get into the garage itself, you're coming off of LaRue, and then that would be west into what is now an alley to get into the garage. So kind of you're going to turn in here, or conversely turn in here, go up. Now, if you were going to come in off of Beaver, you would only be able to be heading southbound, it's a one-way street, and then you'll be able to take a left. So you'd be heading east in this alley, but that's a one-way alley at that point. So you can only go east.
Thank you.
You bet. So back to the activation pedestrian experience. So I myself personally, I've lived here 18 years, raised my kids here, love the downtown. I agree with some of the comments that I picked up on with the Downtown Alliance, Business Alliance. So what we've done, and I think this is kind of an important thing, is we're trying to engage the public. Oh, probably put it on presentation. There you go. Bigger screen. So what we did was we tried to analyze, is it even possible to put retail under the garage? Short answer is no, because the garage, as you go up a garage, has very little headroom at grade level. So there's not a physical, unless you wanted a retail space that was about 3.5 feet tall. So physically not possible to put in the garage. So what we said is, what can we do to activate the streets? The landscape plantings as they stand have, lots of plants, trees, benches, all the things that are required within the landscape buffer to meet the minimum landscape requirements of the city of Flagstaff for our area under our zoning. And meeting with the city, meeting with the DBA, came up with these blocks. These red blocks here are what we want to do is create micro retail there. Now that could be, the creperie place that's right next to Downtown Billiards and that's connected to Old Town Shops. That is a micro retail. That footprint is about 8 feet deep. I guess I'm out of time. Okay, so I got the waiver from the boss, so I appreciate that.
We interrupted you for more information, so
Thank
go
you.
for it.
I'll talk fast. We created these blocks, and what the intent here is along LaRue is to try to create a micro retail that could be a food truck type guy or something similar to the creperie facility. They're self-contained. So what the developer has agreed to do, and working with the city, is potentially eliminate the landscaping for these areas, create a concrete pad or brick pad with a circuit for power. So whoever the retailer is or micro restaurant could plug in, but they're self-contained, just like the creperie. They have their own water, they have their own commissaries, so sewer and water is not needed. And we intended to do that, or we intend to do that along LaRue. Also, there's a nice little pocket here on Birch. Over here at the hotel, within the hotel is a cafe. And what we had proposed is kind of a seating area in those landscape planters. So again, same brick or concrete there to create seats, kind of like what you see out in front of Pay and Take, what you see in front of Shift. small spot to where if somebody wanted to get coffee, they could sit, hang out, and that enlivens the street. You got people sitting there eating, hanging out, talking, reading the paper, or doing whatever they're doing. So we felt that met some of the needs of the DBA. In conjunction with the city beautification grants, we kind of came up with the idea of what about murals, like mural mice on the side of the Orpheum. There's beautification grants that the city has specifically for this types of things, for murals, for artwork, for 2D metal sculptures, things of those nature. And the applicant has agreed, and actually I'm encouraged because I think it looks cool, to put it up along the garage itself. There's large sections of garage and little pop-outs of the garage that we could either eliminate the brick or paint over the brick, or do it along the top bands. To us, we see it as an opportunity to engage the public and go, hey, let's put up some sort of event where people can propose, I want to do this or I want to do that. Bring in the team, bring in the HPC if you guys would like to be involved with it. Vote on who gets to do what, and we could do some really cool murals on the garage. I personally think it's going to break up the size of the garage. We've done a lot to make the garage look good as it stands, but there's only so much you can do with a garage. So I think color and art, I think, would really activate that, and the DBA was in firm agreement with that. So that's our thoughts for the garage itself and the hotel in response to y'all's request, Alex's request to add Malpai. I think we've met the requirements asked upon us to explain where we're at. I'm more than happy to take questions, kind of dive into anything deeper if you have more information needed.
Commissioner Hayes?
Do you have a rendering of what some of that micro business space might look like from an elevation view?
No.
So we can see, you just have the ground,
Yeah.
the plan view.
It came up in a discussion over the past 2 weeks with the DBA to kind of, it could be something similar to the creperie. That's the prime example, because I think that really fits in with the building itself. I mean, you don't even notice it if you've been here long enough. It kind of blends in with the building at this point, and that's the intent. Now, what it ultimately wants to be, I think, it just needs to be a place to where we can get micro retail in there and make it tied into the streetscape. Now, mind you, we have the 5-foot buffer, landscape buffer. Then we've got about a 7.5-foot sidewalk plus another 2.5-foot brick band. So the constraint that you get in right around pay and take, where it's real tight, we won't have that big of an issue. We've got a lot more streetscapes because of our landscape buffer. That was one of the comments brought up last time, which I think I know is in the packet, but the feeling of, see here, the walkability. So we just went around and took some photos. As we all know, downtown Flag, most buildings are straight on the sidewalk, and to me, not very engaging. We've already got the benefit of a 5-foot setback. We've got the benefit of the articulations. I think it makes a lot of sense to be able to slide some micro retail in these pockets and really tie people's eyes and the activation to the pedestrian.
Commissioner Over?
Thank you. Stay on the topic of the micro retail. Is the developer going to try to recruit micro retailers, or is it just going to be like a listed lease?
It would need to be a lease, just because of the way that the city has to work with it. We need a little bit of space from the city, which they've agreed to be able to do. And all of these properties that we mentioned before, there is a lease agreement with the city in place for insurance reasons and whatnot. It's not meant to be an income stream. It's actually really meant to tie everything together.
Okay. Then questions regarding the Malpai Stone. I just want to say thank you very much. I do appreciate the more addition of Malpai Stone on the first floor. I do think it looks fantastic. I just have a couple questions just out of curiosity. So I do recall, and it was in the staff report, that Commissioner Dominguez suggested Malpai Stone on that large column.
This one right here.
Yeah, and I'm just curious if there's a reason why.
We're trying to tie the ground floor to the top floor. Top floor is mostly that limestone look. So, and again, limestone is a acceptable material. I feel like it does break up and add some dynamic in the color. You know, malpai is very dark. This malpai right here is not my favorite malpai. I don't like the gaseous malpai. I like the smooth, and that's what we'd be targeting because that's more historic. And if you put that much brown on a building and tie it all the way up, the nose of the building, the prominent feature of the building, is lost.
Okay. And then this is also just another curiosity to Mount Pine Stone. I do notice if you look at the hotel and go more towards the parking garage in this photo, that brick wall right there.
Mhm.
I'm just curious about that. Why that's that
Like,
way?
It's just a breakup. It kind of mimics what's going on with the windows. And if you look at the current building right now, it's very similar. What happens as you go around the corner, you start seeing a lot more brick. So that's kind of, we're trying to meld the old with new. It's kind of tough, architecturally to make it all make sense and not just have one big blob up there, right? So personally, I think it looks more dynamic as opposed to just a large mess wall like this one that I don't think has much character.
Yeah, I have no problems with it currently. I just was curious of why it stopped where it stopped and it began where it began. I do appreciate this, and I appreciate. Just want to say I appreciate everything the developer and you have done in meeting our requirements and suggestions when it comes to preservation measures and design guidelines.
Absolutely.
Thank
Thank you. And again, the last presentation, I should have done better. I said this a couple weeks ago. I should have done better in putting it into something more palatable than a stack of paper that you guys have to read through. It's not fun. Pictures speak louder than words. We know that. And I feel like what this building is and how much movement it's got vertically, horizontally, ins and outs, and various materials, I think is quite dynamic for the downtown.
Commissioner Stevens?
I just want to thank you so much for the presentation. I also really just want to say that I think that the work that you did with the business associations and all of the outreach, it's excellent and very much appreciated. I have some comments and just a question. The murals and the micro retail space seem like a very proactive approach to this, and really seems to address a lot of the concerns that have been brought up. One idea, and I know the murals are way down the line, but maybe even some history interpretation, in those murals to honor what's been lost or what will be lost, and then to tie it in. So that's just one idea that I wanted to just put out there. And then I do have a question, being that this is the maximum allowable height. I'm not a safety professional, but would there be any types of like fall protection or other structures that would need to be placed on top that could complicate the height requirement and the max height requirement? So I'm just bringing that up, not my area of expertise, but if say down the line there had to be other structures put on top for whatever reasons, safety reasons, fall protection, whatnot, I just wanted to just ask that question.
If additions were put on the building, the city would still review those for the max height requirement. There are specific, if you get into the weeds of the code, specific things that can go like, rooftop appliance that can be over, and it's screening that can be over the height requirement. But again, we will follow city code as we do with all additions to buildings downtown and review that as those happen.
Thank you. And the only reason I brought it up is once it's up, right? And so just it being at that max height, I just wanted to raise the question. Thank you.
I would say that in other municipalities where I've built buildings up to max building height, the parapet height's very small. So professionals that go up there to service roofs come with their own fall protection, and we build in anchoring systems that you can't see from the ground and they don't stick up. Yep.
Okay, Commissioner Hayes?
I was just going to ask how deep or how tall the parapet was.
Ooh, I couldn't tell you, but it's short. The building plans haven't been fully developed, but that is the constraint. So the top part of this parapet that you're looking at is our max building height. So yeah, it's not, it's tight. The building is tight overall because, there are certain minimums that you have to build a floor, and then we're tied into the maximum of the overall building height.
Commissioner Dominguez.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for putting the Malapai on. I think it looks it looks Flagstaff.
Yeah, I agree.
And I do have a question. In all your renderings, I don't see the utilities. Uh, I that's one of my when you drive down and all of a sudden you see a bank of meters and
Sure.
gas meters and all that stuff.
So
If
that is,
they're sort of hidden, that would be
yeah,
fantastic.
they are hidden, and I'll use this as an example. This is where our backup generator sits. Inside these double doors is where all the meters are and the main service. Inside this nook right here, and this is because of APS requirements, is the transformers. And then down here is the switch cabinet. So these are all screened as best as we're allowed to, but these are certain, those elements aren't allowed inside buildings. But the one thing to note, which I think is kind of fun, in my opinion, this alley is a private alley, and we'll have removable bollards so that APS could get into service stuff if they need to. But otherwise, it's a private alley. And if you go to the landscape drawings, this alley actually has a lot of stuff going on inside of it from a planting perspective. And let's see here. Yeah, this kind of gives you a feel for it. But big kind of plaza connecting the garage to the hotel for the client entry, sidewalks, landscaping. It's a fairly busy alley, considering it's an alley. So I also see that as an opportunity to do something cool. I'm not sure what yet, because it's just an alley, but it's a nice alley for Flagstaff and some of the alleys I've been in. This is
Yeah,
really
a nice place to just sit and relax.
Absolutely, and it's quiet.
Commissioner Hayes.
Yes, can we look again at the drawings that have the micro business, the area with the red blocks?
Sure.
And I am very encouraged by the idea that you're going to break that up and have sort of a pedestrian experience, because the storefront character of downtown is what is kind of a draw for downtown. And that would be for any other business on the other side would sort of not, it could impact them.
Right.
So how many micro business spaces are you anticipating? Can you point out with your cursor like where you think maybe the mural would be? 2, 3, 4 micro businesses? And
I suppose it depends on if one's a food truck versus, if you look inside the creperie, I'll keep using that as an example, the actual cooking appliance is about this big, and then the rest is just seats. So could one end be a creperie place and the other end be a hot dog guy? Sure. We just put the blocks on here to start the discussion with the city of how do we manipulate the landscaping requirements, or shouldn't say manipulate, work with the landscaping requirements and offset it with, because when we get rid of landscaping, we have to augment it with, activations like sculptures or there's other ways to meet the requirements of the landscape buffer. In the opinion of a lot of people that I've talked to in this town, landscaping doesn't do much for walkability. It doesn't change people's walkability. It doesn't change the engagement. That's where these micro retails came from. So.
And just a suggestion when it comes to murals, have you thought about something besides just painting? Like, for instance, Tucson did a really great job with historic photographs reproduced on tile, which then also don't have to be repainted, but they look really good.
We're open for anything. That's where I think the competition, like call it the open competition, would be fun. Come with your idea. What do you think should be up there? And we'll get a panel together and we'll all vote on it. I think that's a cool community event that would benefit this garage. And I think it draws everybody together.
Commissioner Dale.
Yes, thank you. I really appreciate this. Back in May, we heard a lot about how the inside of the building was dedicated to Flagstaff, but not much about how the outside was taking into consideration the environment of downtown, and I think you've done a much better job of helping us understand how you're seeing how this fits into downtown. I appreciate the inclusion of Alpine Stone. I think the murals will be a great homage to the kinds of artwork we have downtown, especially if you're working with a brick structure. You could have advertisements for businesses, the way we find like the one brand a mattress ad in the alley, or there could be a mural for the indigenous history that would help incorporate some of the walking tour, for instance, and pull in the requests of the Indigenous Commission. I'm still a little concerned about the scale and the massing. How tall is the parking garage?
Parking garage, 4.5 stories, so 48 feet at the top, I believe, is the height.
Okay, and what would happen if the hotel was 55 feet instead of 60?
We wouldn't be able to have the same amount of rooms.
Okay, I just individually, I think they've come a ways, and I think they definitely fit in downtown better. I think the images of some of the other buildings are helping me, but when you put them next to each other, and most of the discussion of other similar massed buildings are not historic, and N2 specifically says that they're comparable to historic structures, and the ones that you've pictured are the recent hotel, the new county courthouse, and some buildings that were built in like the 60s and 70s, which, while technically historic, most of the buildings I see people go and look at downtown are going to be the church, I guess that's
Church is
on the edge of
taller.
the overlay. Yeah. The Weatherford, what's the McMillan building, like the historic buildings. And this just seems so much bigger than those ones. And so that's I think where I'm most stuck with this design, because you've got two very big blocky buildings right next to each other that are sort of at the max size of what we see downtown and not the size of the sort of more historic buildings. So I don't know if you can speak to that, or if
Sure. Be happy
people on the
to.
commission disagree with me, but that's just where I am.
So we're working within the confines of the code that was voted on by P and Z and adopted by the city. That's what we have to work with, and that our response meets those codes.
Is it Lauren?
If it would be helpful as clarification, the commission could request that Mr. Mark look at the renderings, and if you have more specific questions about breaking up the massing with articulation materials, again, 60 feet is allowable, and as suggested by the design guidelines, the best way to address this is to break it up through materials and articulation. And so that's really what the tool that's there for the commission to point to. So if we could pull up the renderings if you had specific questions about that.
Yeah, I mean, the hotel, I think, is looking a lot better, a lot more broken up, a lot smaller. But then you've got this big, I don't know, it might help to see some renderings with a mural on the side of the parking garage so we can see that. Or in May, I asked if there was a way to, because I was concerned that you just see these buildings floating in space, and I was hoping to get some, like, I think I said on the ground, like what does it look like when you're standing, and then, looking around and seeing how it's impacting the buildings around it. And while these overview renderings are helping, it's not really giving me a sense of what it's like if you're standing at the dark sky or somewhere else downtown.
I have a quick question while we're looking at these. Could you identify which corner is which, please?
Sure. This corner right here, this is LaRue, and this is Birch. And then this corner right here, this is actually the alley. So the hotel, you're not seeing the hotel right here, but we're looking at the Birch frontage right here. So when I was talking about some micro retail, it fits perfectly right there, fits perfectly right there, and it fits perfectly right there. That's why we came up with those 3 red blocks. And to answer your question about the articulation and the scale, these columns right here are structural. Some of these are non-structural that were added on to create the articulations that's required to break up that big, call it gulag, that you see in Phoenix. This is what was designed to meet that requirement.
One sec. Following along that, on the Birch and LaRue corner, what is that building right there?
This right here, it's the exit stair to get out in emergency. It connects
Thank you.
this stair tower right here and then spits you right out onto the street.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Hayes.
I'm very encouraged by the, the inclusion of the micro businesses and the mural and everything. I think it would be really helpful to see what that would look like potentially, even if it's just a placeholder of something, a made-up mural or a food truck or something, to get an idea, because overall, this is very large structure. The two structures together are basically, I mean, they're from Beaver to LaRue. That is going to be, it's going to diminish the other historic buildings in the overlay.
Could we consider that as a, yeah, condition of approval? I was just drawing a blank there because we'd be happy to do that. It doesn't change that there would be micro retail there or not. I mean, I get where you're coming from. It would be good to see that, but I'm just, yeah, where do we go next?
Commissioner Dominguez.
That little corner right there, that's Birch in the alleyway,
Oh, this one?
right there, yeah. Woodmen of the World. Does anybody know Woodmen of the World? Okay, it was a fraternal organization for the mill workers, the lumberjacks, all the people that worked at the sawmill here in Flagstaff. The flagpole in front of the existing building now is it's got a dedication plaque that says Woodmen of the World. Is there any possibility that that could be salvaged and put in that little corner?
The plaque.
I don't see a flagpole, first of all.
The plaque itself?
Well, it's in the base of the flagpole that sits on, where am I?
Birch and
Beaver, thank you. On Beaver, right in front of the building that exists now.
Oh, from 19 West Birch. You're
Yeah.
saying salvage that?
And if we could just salvage that plaque,
Be happy to.
I mean, it's historical. Sad, and I'm sure there's some history with it somehow, but I think it would be perfect right there. People
So
can go to it. I mean, there could be some history of the mill workers or what have you.
just a reminder, this is where the two transformers sit. So I would put it more on this face so you walk right past it on the streetscape. I'd be happy to do that.
It would be part of the walking tour.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Commissioner Dale.
Is there going to be parking on top of the garage?
The top floor has partial parking. So to meet the requirements of, well, just everything, there's a half floor, call it, up here that stops, and you can actually see it a little bit better. It's not the- You know what? Maybe it is in here. You can see it right here. So on the south elevation, when we're sitting in the alley between us and the chocolate shop, this is a partial parked. So the southwest corner of the garage itself has a partial, that's why it's called 4.5 stories.
Okay, but no one is actually parking on the roof.
Yeah, you can see right here, this is kind of your drive path, roughly speaking. So your car headlights, the crash barrier is blocking the car itself, but there is parking up there.
You have no cover then?
No.
Okay. I was just thinking, what if it were shorter and smaller?
Yeah,
But it looks like you've already
that's the
tried to-
difficulties of
yeah.
a parking garage. There's maximum slopes, there's minimum slopes, there's cross slopes, there's parking on ramps, not on ramps. They're actually pretty complicated.
It's just so ugly. And it's not because you guys didn't try, you did. It's just parking garages aren't nice looking buildings, and it's just so big and in the middle of downtown, and so then it feels bigger than it is. Like the hotel is now looking smaller than it did 2 months ago, just because of the way you've helped break it up.
Yeah.
But the parking garage looks so big.
You know, the ironic part is the parking garage is smaller than the hotel. So yeah, I mean, I wish we didn't have cars either, but this is society that we live in.
Okay, so I'm going to bring up some things. This is Chair Westheimer. So I am concerned about N2 because it says that they subdivide the surface into portions similar in scale to historic facades, varying setbacks, roof forms, and materials. And it really, those are some pretty large planes. I don't know if you can break them up more, but they're not similar to historic buildings.
Historic buildings actually don't have these setbacks and offsets.
Oh, I'm
for most
referring
part.
to like vertical.
Mhm.
So when you have 4 of those 4-pane windows, that's quite a big span. That's what I'm thinking of. That's not similar to how wide the historic buildings are.
Sure. These are actually recessed patios up here, and that's a recessed sky deck, call it. This is actually an overhang, so there is a little bit of a recess there to kind of work your way up the building as you go. And then there is these fascia elements that pop out along here that further setbacks at the top floor.
Further setbacks to the top
The
floor.
building,
I
kind
don't,
of birthday cakes, if you
I don't
will.
really see that, but how
Yeah,
much is it birthday caking?
It's a rendering, but you see this column right here, this goes straight up the building. This is actually an overhang. So at the ground floor, you're actually have an overhang of sorts to get to the first floor of hotel rooms, 3 floors up, and then another step back up here, which is a ledge to the final floor.
So is it really a step back, or is it that there is a protruding line that comes out?
Little of both. So yes, I mean, the structure is what it is. It is vertical, but there's ins and outs at each window. There's little recesses here. The brick returns to the window, much like a recessed window would be in a historic building. And then, like I said, these patios are well set back.
So how deep are those recesses?
Depends on which one. You know, these recesses, I want to say they're 4 to 6 inches going off of memory. This is a full-on patio up here, so you got 8 feet, 6, 8 feet. The top floor deck is fully recessed, so that's got to be at least 15 feet.
So there is some color theory that could be applied here. Light colors move forward and darker colors move back. So if you were to switch and bring that lighter color that you have on the top floor to the second floor and use dark colors to the top, it would help to minimize visually. You can see that with the dark section, which I'm not sure what that is. I hope you'll tell me or tell us. But anyway, if you were to switch those, you can tell looking at that dark area actually moves back and that light area moves forward and makes the building look taller and bigger. So something to consider if we're worried about the massing, that would help a lot.
Just add, if you're talking about changing the brick material with the stucco at the top, then I think it would no longer meet the design guidelines because we wouldn't have enough of a primary material, and the secondary material would be too great. So it wouldn't meet the architectural design standards or the design guidelines. Am I understanding you to switch the
No.
stucco with a brick?
I would clarify that the stucco would be just the second floor and then there would be 3 floors of brick. And that would help to make the top portion darker and it would not feel as big if you give it a try with your computer. I don't know how you do that magic, but give it a try and you'll see what I mean. And that dark section pretty much shows it, that it moves back and the light colored areas are much more bold than the dark. Does that make sense? It would also tie into the Maupai better. And I love the idea of putting Maupai on the column, but there are too many rock climbers for that to be safe. Just be honest about it.
So are you proposing making that a condition of approval?
I'm asking if you would consider that in order to meet some of the end conditions.
What I'm trying to avoid is in May, we were set on a task with 3 things to address. We tried to address them. If you're saying that doing that would address the N2, we absolutely could look at that. But what I don't want to do is come back or submit something for review and then we change it again. So I'm just trying to understand where the goalpost is.
I can't answer that. I mean, this is a huge project and very difficult to absorb in 4 days. And so I don't think that I got the chance to say this before. I've seen this all along ever since I saw this, I don't know, at the DBA office 2 years ago or 3 years ago. So I've noticed this, but now is my opportunity with this certificate of appropriateness to bring this up. So it's something I think that would help with the massing, and people would be happier if the building were to appear smaller. So that's why I'm not going to say, oh, I don't like it, put it back. I guarantee you I won't do that. Okay. So I'm also wondering, is that okay? Does that all make sense to you?
It does.
Okay. So the other thing I'm wondering about the area that is dark, what is that?
This up here,
Yes.
that is, I believe that's hardy, painted hardy. And then this is a steel trellis.
Is that rooms? What's the purpose
No,
in
no,
having
no,
a
no.
dark
Thi-
area?
This is a bar and restaurant up here. This corner from all the way over to here is restaurant and bar. Open to the public.
Open to the public? So no, I think that, we sent something to the Indigenous Commission. I think something needs to be sent here to the appropriate city commission or department to evaluate the sound accumulation of having a bar 50 feet in the air. There are neighborhoods surrounding this area, and I live in one that's, I don't know, about a mile away, and I hear downtown. And then there's North LaRue, and I've heard the bars up there just biking through. And I think that sound that high in the air, I would like the city to assess what that's going to do to the livability of downtown. Because the city and DBA want more residences downtown, but if you put more sound up above, the way it's been handled lately is with complaints. And I would prefer we not set people up to complain, but we do what needs to be done. I don't know if architecturally you can do something, but we have to assess the impact of sound.
Just add, we do have to focus on the specific design guidelines in the design handbook. And it may be a valid concern. I realize you're asking the city outside the scope of a certificate of appropriateness in this meeting to consider that, but the commission does not have a tool in the design handbook to condition that, apart from just saying this as a statement.
Commissioner, if it helps, downtown bars are open till 2. This particular one will be shutting down at midnight.
Okay. Let's see, what were some of my other comments? Hold on for a minute, please.
Here, can I ask a question quickly too about the
Commissioner
top story?
Dale.
While we're on it, is there a reason you guys went with stucco instead of continuing the brick
On which part?
top story? Just because so many of the buildings downtown that are brick all the way up, but you've had this top story of white stucco.
No particular reason at all. We could change it. Yeah. Are you talking about this whole white section on the top floor?
Yeah,
Changing it to all brick?
yeah. I just wondered why you went with stucco instead of brick.
Because we're supposed to have primary and secondary materials and we had to break it up. That's part of the design guideline as well. You have to have more than 2.
And the like stucco columns and the horizontal lines along the window don't count as that?
Calculation wise, that's kind of where the constraint is. Yeah. I mean, if it solves the problem on this elevation to add brick to the top floor and eliminate that white on the top floor, we could do that, but I don't know how calculation wise that would affect things.
You have 2 materials in that you have the malpai, excuse me, and the brick. I'm not saying I would remove that because it does add interest. I would just move it to the second floor. But you already have 2 materials. So I think it's something to consider.
Yeah, it sounds, I think, percentage wise, it could be fine, but Commissioner Dale's suggestion is counter to Chair Westheimer's suggestion and the materials. And again, one of the arguments for why the massing is broken up is the use of different materials. And I think that, could create an additional issue, is if it's all brick, it will inevitably look bigger. But
yeah, I was just curious. It might be an option too if you didn't want to consider swapping the brick and the stucco. What if, could you make the stucco black? Like that would make it darker on the top too, and it would blend in more with the colors on the bar and maybe make the top floor seem more uniform. I don't know.
We could paint it any color you'd like, as long as it's allowable.
Bright green,
Yeah.
blue like the sky.
Muted colors is all I've been told.
Correct. The
Earth
design guidelines call for using earth tones with a certain light reflective value. So I do think all black probably would not meet the design guidelines or
It'd
our
be very
architectural standards.
Probably, if
Right.
they were black stucco, just, yeah.
Yeah, it used as an accent would meet those, but not as for a greater percentage.
Commissioner Hayes.
What about like chocolate brown sort of instead of black? And then the rooftop bar or cafe also that color.
So I want to be clear, just to clarify this, because I'm looking at the palette right now. I believe this top band is all limestone, which is an off-white, so tannish white, like that. To me, that's a good muted earth tone. Personally, having, even though I understand where you're coming from, Commissioner, about the feeling of this being overbearing, I think a softer limestone up there actually looks really good, personally.
To clarify, I'm not saying it doesn't make the building look good. I'm saying the building looks larger with a light color on the top floor. If the light color were to come down to the second floor, it would not emphasize the height as much as that does. Because the N, whichever N category that is, it's either 2 or 5 or 3. It does say that it should be compatible with other historic buildings in the area. And I think that in some of the information we received, some of the comparables were not historic buildings. And they, and I think that intent was for them to be historic buildings that they're compared with. So that was a suggestion to make the building appear less massive and shorter.
We'd be happy to do that if that's a condition.
Commissioner Hayes?
So I'm trying to picture what the limestone, it looks completely smooth there, but is it like kaibab limestone that's not a flat surface, but somewhat textured? I can't tell from the,
It's a 16 by 24 tile per se. It's a veneered natural limestone with a distressed finish.
like what's on the Marriott.
I don't know what's on the Marriott, what they picked.
I know it's far too late for this meeting, but I actually spend a lot of time reviewing construction documents and with engineers and architects and looking at renderings, and they generally bring multiple images of possibilities and usually a sample board of the material. So, I mean, just advice for future. Then we usually sit down with cultural resource specialists and pick what's appropriate.
Okay, any more questions for the applicant, or should we move to hear from the public? We have one card. Okay, so let's move to the public comment. We have one card from Maury Herman. Please come up. You have 3 minutes, although I think 5 is better, but 3.
Hi, I sent a comment late this afternoon. I brought some printed ones. Oh, I'm sorry. Is that better? I sent a comment late this afternoon with a letter from Aspie, Watkins, and Diesel. Did everyone get that? Do people need written copies of it? Sure. So, first I want to say I'm the FDBA, the Downtown Business Alliance, which I'm just speaking as an individual, but I am a member, is organizing a regional conference this week with national speakers. So I think there's great interest in this project by many members of the FDBA, but there's a huge conflict. So there would be more people here otherwise. I'm really glad to see the red blocks outlining the micro retail. This is the first time I saw that map. I was part of some of the early discussions on it. And that's, I consider that real progress. And I want to spend sort of the rest of my 2 minutes talking about the future and not so much this project. My sense is that when this project first appeared, city staff advised that 60 feet was allowable. And if you give somebody advice like that for 2 years, you kind of have to live with it. That said, when I read guideline N2, it's clear to me that you can mitigate for width based on variation. It's not so clear to me that you can mitigate for height. It's real clear that it's saying the historic buildings are 2 to 4 stories. I actually think that's an exaggeration. If you did your drone shot from where the historic train depot is, mostly it'd be 1 story with some 2 and a couple buildings like the Monte Vista that are higher. So my worry is if somebody wanted to go to late for the train where that is, that critical block of Aspen and San Francisco, and tear down that building and build this hotel, the parking would have to be elsewhere. Could you tear down the whole facade? Would you have to do a recess on the upper stories? Those are good mitigation techniques to keep a facade in place and to move the facade back on upper stories. There are other mitigation techniques, and I think N2 actually gives you some control on height, particularly in critical areas. So it's also clear to me that this project came to you very late and that there was a lot of advice given to the applicant beforehand that we have to live with. Please review my written thing. I really look forward to a future discussion. And if there are questions, I'll try.
Thank you, Mr. Herman. And thank you everyone who sent letters because we need public participation.
Thank you.
I guess that's the end of public comment. So now we go, would the applicant like to respond? We actually had a lot of conversation before, but you could have 5 minutes if you'd like to respond to anything now.
I don't believe so, other than just restating the facts that we are meeting the code we're mandated by. We've done as many mitigation efforts as there is within the code to meet the requirements. And I really think that the collaboration with the city and the DBA was important and will provide a true benefit to this overall project. So I hope you guys will consider this appropriateness and the certificate and approve it as we move forward.
Thank you. Staff, do you have any other comments? 'Cause we're following the council's rules of procedure. You get 5 minutes.
Yeah, happy to address any specific questions that you had about the written or the oral public comment. But I think we've covered a lot of the ground about the height limitation.
Is anyone thinking and needs a couple more minutes to think before you have a question for staff? No? I have a question for staff. You've referenced a lot of code, as did the applicant's representative, but we were never in on hearing what codes were used to get it through concept or what you're looking at for site, because that helps us understand where we are and what we're looking at. It would be nice to have a presentation to this commission to help us understand how this project has progressed through time, where it is now, what codes it's met.
Sure, I would say that we did this presentation. Our current planning manager did the presentation on this topics and specifically in advance of this project last fall, where she went through all of the types of development applications and our architectural design standards and how they're, so she explained what we review in concept plan, how staff review that, what we're looking at, how the difference between that and site plan. I'm happy to resend that presentation. Of course, it's also recorded and we can, revisit with additional training as needed. I know some commissioners are new and may not have been here for that, but last fall we did specifically have that training at the request of the commission because of this project.
So thank you for that. I'm speaking specifically to this project because I know it's gone through a number of iterations that are mentioned in your staff report of substantive comments and things that went back and forth with the applicant. I'm just interested to know the evolution of what they brought to you in the beginning, what the code required, how it's evolved over time, so we can understand what we're looking at specifically with this. That's what I think would be really helpful for us to evaluate what we're looking at, because there's a lot of experience in code that goes into where we are right now. And I think it would be good to know what happened.
And I will say, you know, this is reflective of what the city is currently reviewing right now. At the concept plan, we do not review architectural renderings. We were just looking at a site plan. So there is no design guideline review at that stage, which is why the commission does not review it at that stage. I do as the, you know, staff who reviews for heritage preservation. So the site plan again, it's detailed in the staff report. And I discussed also in my staff report a little bit in my presentation, some of the changes, such as the architectural design standards. And we discussed the percentages for the primary and secondary materials, but I believe the date of the plans you're looking at is the second, as submitted to you first in May. I believe that was the same date as what staff reviewed in the second site plan submittal. It was submitted at the same time. So basically, based on past HPC recommendation, HPC has asked staff in the past not to bring a site plan to you for certificate of appropriateness until the city staff has had one round of substantive comment, and that is what happened here. So the city had one round of substantive comment on the site plan. They revised based on staff comments, and then that was what was brought to you in May. And now it's been updated again based on additional staff comments and your comments, and that's where we're at. Happy to provide more detail if it relates to, you know, getting back to approving the certificate of appropriateness. Otherwise, if we need additional training on, you know, the types of things that go into staff review, happy to do that at another time.
Commissioner Hayes?
I have a question that has to do with the submittal from the applicant about how their design meets the design guidelines and why they don't actually follow the design guideline book. For one, N9 in the design guidelines is be aware of floodplain regulations. The applicant lists N9 parking integration. The project provides 200 parking stalls. Why are they not I'd say about 75% of them do not match the design guidelines, but lists that as a reference. Why are they like that?
It sounds like a question for the applicant. And again, they prepared those materials and submitted them for the packet. Do you have specific questions about their analysis for them, or just a general question? It sounds like there was a typo in their application and their numbers were off.
I made a table of them actually, and I went through them for what's in the design guideline. I'd say they're just not a few off. They're almost all off. They actually don't address the that specific guideline. And so I'm like, I went to go look to see maybe did they download, you know, an older design guideline book, but this was 97. This is the one on the city page. For instance, N1, align the facade of the new building with the established setbacks of the area. Compatibility with context was their listing. N2, new buildings should appear similar in mass and scale with historic structures in the area. N2 from the applicant side, pedestrian orientated design. I don't understand how that addresses that actual provision.
And I apologize, and that again, it sounds like there are typos, and that has made your review more difficult, but are there specific things you have questions about with the design guideline that they need to address in order to move forward with the review? It sounds like this isn't, I understand it's frustrating that maybe the numbers don't match the guidelines in their analysis, but is there anything, substantive that is preventing us from moving forward with this? I do feel like if the request here is that they just correct this in their application materials, that still isn't getting to the point of the certificate of appropriateness review.
Well, it's most of them. Like N4 in the guidelines, it says use roof forms that match those used historically. The applicant puts N4, building mass and articulation. It's hard to see if they're meeting the design guidelines when they're not even referencing them, and I made a table in no time at all putting them together.
So are you asking that you need the applicant to do more analysis of all of these in order for you to approve? I did go through everyone in the staff report and analyze each of the applicable design guidelines individually as the staff analysis of this. If more analysis is requested by the applicant.
Yes, Alicia, but I think she's asking, are there any that you wanted them to address that they're not addressing? There might be typos and they might have some extra ones or incorrectly labeled ones, but are there any in here that you wanted them to address that they didn't? I think just Lauren is looking for something to, hang a hat on to give feedback.
So that was Commissioner Dale. Commissioner Hayes?
Yeah, N2, new buildings should appear similar in mass and scale with historic structures in the area. That's not actually listed on their list. And that's just the first one.
So if I may interject, I believe we went through everything in the May meeting, whittled it down with the city attorney as to what the list was that was deficient or that you had questions on. If those were not addressed at that time, that would have been a great time for us to fix what she's referencing, because the floodplain issue, our building is built up out of the floodplain. We have to do that. I can't speak to the labeling issues, but when we went through this in May, that was the specific reason why we went through it in May, is what about the whole list did we not have enough information on? What should we come back with? And that's what we've done. So I'm really a little bit confused as to why we went through that in May in a 4.5-hour session, and now here we are in July, and we're bringing it back up. We went through it for 4.5 hours. Yes, it was. Yes, it was in May. Yes. No, May of 26.
We went through each one of these
Every
things and
single
we
one.
said we have concerns with N2 and N5.
Correct.
And that is what we have been talking about again here today. And so I think the question is, what is Alicia concerned about? If it's typos, that's not necessarily helpful. I don't think we can deny a certificate of appropriateness because they've mislabeled something if they have addressed the issue at hand. So if there is a continued concern that you don't think in this report they have addressed N2 or N5, then we can talk about that. But I don't think you can say, I'm rejecting the certificate of appropriateness because you have called N9 something different than it is, and we didn't even bring up N9 as a problem that we had with the design. Does that make sense?
It does. I was just wondering why that was submitted like that, because there's a long list of them, basically N1 through N9, for instance, is in the applicant's submittal, but they're completely labeled different. So I was asking why.
Human error. That's my best answer. I couldn't tell you. It's been a year of going back and forth on this, so I can't explain that other than we made a mistake.
I just have a clarifying question.
Commissioner Stevens?
Thank you. I just have a clarifying question. Are you looking, Commissioner Hayes, maybe at the original submitted list and calling that out? That confused me a little bit too.
You mean the list that we asked for in May? That you mean of the specific ones? Because I'm looking at the guidelines, I'm looking at the design book guidelines, and then I'm looking at um, the applicant's use of the design guidelines, and I had to kind of make a table to figure out what they're talking about because they're not the same. They're not what's in the design guidelines.
It just seems to be that that was the original submitted materials. And then that was gone through in the May meeting and clarified, it sounds like. So I think they're just old materials is what I've determined.
That is correct. We were talking about the materials you had for review in the May meeting, and they have submitted additional updated materials in the packet. So I think to Commissioner Stevens' point, we've in some ways moved past that as these comments were not made in May as something that they were asked to correct. So they did not change that in their revised submittal.
Okay, so I just want to come back to my point about understanding how we got here, because if I look at N1, it says, building fronts typically align at the sidewalk downtown. This distinguishes the area from suburban auto, blah, blah, blah. So this project was asked by the city through concept or site plan to move it back 5 feet. That's the kind of thing we need to understand, because other downtown buildings don't do that. So how did we get to that? I mean, it might create a place for vitality and walkability. So I'm not saying it's a good or a bad thing. I'm just saying, how did we get to this when no other downtown building has a 5-foot setback?
It is addressed in my staff report, this one and the one in May, about the landscape buffer requirements that are in code and how they set it as close as possible to the sidewalk based on the code requirements.
So how do these two, like design handbook, which we're supposed to use, and the code work together? Can we get an explanation of this, please?
And I would say, I mean, essentially this is how they work together. The code has been updated since the design handbook in 1997. And so in some ways, some of the code updates really now take precedent over the design handbook. And again, this was analyzed in the staff report in May. It was not identified as something the commission wanted changed or to see additional information on N1. So I understand there are some discrepancies there, but again, maybe this is an area for additional training and discussion of how to update those two. But it sounded like N1 and the setbacks is not at issue in the meeting. And in fact, the commission seems supportive of the micro retail that they are putting in that setback area. So I don't want to lose focus of that and ask the applicant to request a waiver of our city landscaping requirements when it doesn't seem like the commission is supportive of that.
Does anyone have anything else they'd like to ask or say? Jesse Dominguez, please, Commissioner Dominguez.
I'd just like to apologize to the applicant, to city staff, and to us and everybody involved. I think we've all had a big learning process here. And thanks for sticking it out, but I think it's time to move on. It's whatever's in the best interest of Flagstaff, and I think what we need to call for the question.
Sorry, we need to call for a motion. Is that what you said? Does anyone want to make a motion?
I'm ready
If I
for 'em.
may, this is Sterling Solomon, the city attorney. The public hearing has not been closed yet, and that would need to happen before any motions or additional deliberations occur. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Oh, nope, don't be sorry. Thank you for that reminder. Okay, so the public hearing has ended, and we are moving on to commission deliberation. We've had a lot of questions to staff and applicants. So The public hearing has ended, and now we can open the floor for a motion from the commissioner.
I don't know if I'm ready for a motion, but it would be nice to, it was nice at the city council meeting when they went around and talked about what they had sort of summarized out of it. So I'm going to try to do that. I think that these new designs have definitely answered my concerns about the N5 materials. I again appreciate the incorporation of Malpai stone. I love the idea of the murals. I'm still not necessarily sold that these fit with the massing of historic buildings. I think that you have proven that there are recent buildings that are of similar mass and size, but I don't know that I don't know that you have shown that historic buildings in the overlay have similar mass and size. And I think seeing how they might look with the inset retail spaces with murals on the big front facade of the parking garage, potentially renderings of different material colors at the top would, I'm just such a visual person that it would really help me to see what it would look like. And that's kind of where I'm sitting with N2.
Commissioner Hayes?
I feel like they have demonstrated enough for building materials or similar employed historically. I would like to see some different renderings. I'm not satisfied that N2 has been met. I would like to see some other ways in which it, can see the microspace, see something of what that would look like, an example of that, a rendering of the elevation from LaRue and Birch of what that breakup could look like. We're talking about basically from Beaver to LaRue. This is going to be a massive, even though it's two different buildings, it's going to be like one big construction. And we have to be very thoughtful of what's going to be in Flagstaff for a really long time. That's sort of why we are on this commission to review the design guidelines, because everyone in Flagstaff is going to live with it for probably 50, 70 years.
Commissioner Overman?
I agree with Commissioner Dale and Commissioner Hayes that the applicant has satisfied in 5. I do appreciate the greater use of Mount Pie stone, especially on the bottom floor, and I do appreciate the responses of why the column and that brick wall weren't used as Mount Pie stone. I do appreciate it greatly. Regarding N2, I think I wouldn't mind seeing other renderings as Commissioner Dale and Commissioner Hayes have requested regarding murals or micro retail. I think that'll give a better picture of the mass and scale of this building. And also like a view from the ground, I think will also help greatly. Just to get an idea of the scale of it. Because again, these are just images and it's hard to put in perspective. Thank you.
Commissioner Stevens?
A lot of the language we use in archaeology, historic preservation, it can be really vague. And then in historic preservation, like what we're doing now, it gets very specific. And so this has been a really interesting experience. I think we have tested our process and the codes, and I think we've all learned some things. I appreciate everything I've learned here tonight. I would not mind seeing photos or renderings of what that could look like. I don't feel like it's a condition that I need to have. At some point, it would be nice to see. I think that the interesting thing about downtown Flagstaff is there's not one particular time period represented. It's a very long time period that's represented. And with thoughtful design, in 50 or 70 years, this building can be one of them potentially. So I just thank you for everybody and all the thoughts here this evening.
I'm getting looked at.
Commissioner Dominguez?
Well, I just think that we're kicking the can down the road a little bit. I feel that the applicant has done their due diligence. I feel that they've tried, they really have tried. They, we didn't save the building. I mean, and it was significant, but I think it's time to move on to the next step. And I think we're all learning from this process. I mean, I think we're all looking the, at the process. I think the process didn't work. It's like we put the cart in front of the horse. We've done a lot of back and forth, and I know everybody's got the best interest of the city of Flagstaff and the citizens. The citizens. Murray, I appreciate your comments. Are we setting a precedence with this building? I don't know. But I think that are we going to ask the applicant to come back next month? I don't know. Thank you.
So I guess it's my turn. I appreciate all the work that you've put into this. I know for a fact that you've been working on this for a couple of 3 years now. Back and forth. I don't know if that's typical for other projects you've done, but I appreciate that you've worked with the city and now you're working with us. I would suggest that you look at a way that they activated the sidewalk outside the Grove in Asheville, North Carolina. It's really attractive and very successful. So you might consider looking at what other places have done to activate on the outside. And I think if it ends up being trucks that come across the sidewalk, that's not the best. I know that the crepe place doesn't do that. It's built in, but bringing trucks across the sidewalk, I think would not be great. I wish I could have seen these in context. You can do a lot of things with computers. Don't ask me how, but people can. To have seen the surrounding buildings would have been helpful to have done that. And I appreciate your willingness to work with the DBA and to listen to people and to activate it, because LaRue Street is one of our most beloved streets, and it will be very helpful to have activated space there. I really do think that the colors have to be switched to help with that contextual and to help with that massing problem. So I think that's all I have to say.
If you don't mind, I wouldn't mind at least saying something before it goes to a vote. I understand it's been a very difficult process for everyone. I wear hearing aids, so it sounds like I'm yelling when I talk loud. I'm sorry. I get that from everybody. And I don't want to feel like I'm yelling. It's been a difficult process for everyone. I never dreamed I'd have to go to the city council to try and override your vote. I felt bad about doing that. It's obvious, I think, to all of us here that, at least to myself, I followed every code, every step, everything all along the way that the city is laid out to me. Obviously, the city and the Historic Preservation Commission need to get together and redefine their process going forward. I understand that. I think that's apparent to everyone, but we all learned something from this. I think we have a great building. I appreciate your comments. We're working to, we have code requires, planning requires 5-foot landscaping. We're working with them to try and get some business along the side. Everyone says, well, is it walkable? Well, if you park your car there, you're going to walk across the street. I sit at in the alley there, and I see people walking down the alley. There's going to be a brand new alley that goes north-south, that goes all the way from the mall, all the way down to the other hotel down there. On the other side, you got Dark Sky Brewery. Our customers are going to come out and go over to that place. Our restaurant, our coffee shop, our bar, they're open to all the public. So that's adding retail. When we get some more microbrewery, we'll get some murals. I can't tell you exactly what they're going to be. That's going to take a while. I don't want this project to continue to keep getting held up for what's the design of the mural like? What's the design of that space? I can guarantee you that we'll do that kind of stuff. That's the kind of person I am. So I think, like I said, I think we've followed all the codes. I hope that all of us can just put this to bed and move forward. That gives you more time to work with the city, revise the codes, revise the process. Sorry that I'm the one that had to bring that forward, but that's the way it is. I've stuck through this because I think it's a great project. I think it's, it's a great, the old project that was there, the parking garage was 8 stories. I bought an extra lot so we could make it smaller. I've done things like that to help out to make this project fit into the city, to help Massing with everything. So you may not know, when I bought the project, there was the hotel and an 8-story parking garage, like I said, and it was an improved concept plan. So that's where I started from. That's how it came about. And so it's progressed to this now with various different steps on demolitions, on cultural studies, on all kinds of things. It's been a process, but thank you for your time and effort, and hopefully we can all move forward.
Mr. O'Connell, thank you for the clarification about the 8-foot that you originally came with and bringing it down. That's the kind of information that, had we had that all along, we would have been informed. That's what I'm trying to get across about telling us about the other parts of the code that were addressed so that we understand how we got to where we are. So thank you for that information.
Well, every time we've had a meeting, Lauren's expressly written out where we met the code. So to me, it's been very explainable. I have to understand the code so I know what we have to do. Architects, everyone that's worked on this project reads the city codes. So that's what we go by. That's our guideline, as the current codes that are in place. I don't know what else to tell you, but
I'm just thanking you. I'm just thanking you.
all right, you're welcome. It's hard to hear you.
Does anyone want to do a motion?
I guess my question is, it sounds like we are in agreement that this is moving forward in some way or another, that we're not going to deny it. I think the question is, do we approve it, or do we want to see renderings? And that, I guess, is going to be the question. Or yes, Lauren.
And with the renderings, just a point of clarification, as Mr. O'Connell mentioned, they will not have specific murals or specific micro retail, so they would only be conceptual and subject to change. So what you would see in those renderings may not be what it ends up looking like. So just something for the commission to consider, if what level of detail you need to give them, and to know that if you require that and that's what you approve it on, it is still subject to change.
Yes, and Duffy had also mentioned some renderings changing the color scheme here, which is something we asked for one of the downtown houses at some point, and that actually did make the building look quite a lot smaller when they put the darker colors up on top. So it's not just, I want to know exactly what mural, you know what I mean? It's just, how does that help break up the space to help with concerns we have over N2 massing? But it also sounds like some people trust the designers to know that that's going to do that and don't necessarily need to see the rendering. So I guess that's my question is, do we want to see this again or in August, or no? And how does that impact the motion that we make?
Commissioner Hayes?
I was just going to ask Lauren to pull up again the recommended motions so we can look them over.
But I think that's up to you. Yes, you can approve with conditions. So this could be, you can approve it, you can approve with a condition. So that could be, the condition is that, you would like those updated renderings to be provided to you.
Well, and some of these things are going to be further down the road because they still need to demolish a building and construct a building. and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, we could approve and then they could get started on some of that stuff and then bring back building material colors and things like that
Yes.
later,
Um,
right?
yes.
The architect is nodding.
Right.
Yes. So oh, the contractor is nodding yes. So
Commissioner Hayes?
So my question is, what exactly is the conditions of approval that we are involved in the discussion of what's appropriate for like the selection of colors and things to help with the massing and scale issue? And I really would like to see the micro business conception ideas, how they're going to do that. And I realize that's something that's sort of they're looking at later. And so that they're going to have to, you know, probably explore some ideas. So let me explain to me or to us what exactly comes with the condition. Do we just be informed or do we get to review anything? What is a condition of approval?
And you do both regularly. So that's up to you. So you can have it be a condition for something that has to come back to you for review and approval. It can just be something that you're informed. Oftentimes, you ask for changes to reports and then you just want to receive them to note that it had happened. You can have it be something that's submitted, to me and I review. Those are, all up to you to decide.
Commissioner Stevens?
So a condition of approval could be something like approved with the switching of the colors to be brought back potentially for approval, but the renderings to be brought back as they're developed for information purposes. So that's one idea.
Commissioner Hayes?
And then they could move forward in the process and work on that, and they'll just agendize that and come back to another meeting and have that discussion with us.
Yes, if you're asking for them to come back for approval.
I think Commissioner Dominguez also has the condition that the plaque be incorporated into the plans in some way, that it be salvaged and incorporated, correct?
It was just a request if they don't want to do it, they don't want to do it. But I think it's part of history that is sitting in front of that building that we are the Historic Preservation Commission, correct? So the Woodman of the World is real important because my dad was a Woodman of the World. He worked at the sawmill 1917 and retired in 1965. Died 2 days later after retired. So to me, Woodman of the World, no, who's Woodman of the World? It was a fraternal order of all these sawmill workers. And it doesn't have to be a condition. I just hope that it gets incorporated. It's part of history. It's part of Flagstaff. I mean, Flagstaff was built on pine trees. They cut a whole bunch of them down and they're all over the world. Believe it or not, 2x4s. Some of them are in my house too. But anyways,
If
I
you're,
want to start rambling on and I'm sorry about that,
I
but
would just,
I just hope that
thank you, Commissioner
do it.
Dominguez. And as it's not related to the specific design guidelines, and since you've stated you're okay with it just being an informal commitment, it's probably best to not have it as a condition of approval as it's not related to the specific design guidelines in this case.
And I have a question. So if there's a condition based on color, one person likes one color, another person likes another color, another person likes a color, how many times am I going to come back with different colors? And, I have an architect that chooses the colors. I have designers that choose the colors. I have to get the building, once you approve it, approved through Hilton's. So I just don't want to have to come back 15 times for the color. Is it one time? Is it twice?
That has never happened. I think in the past, we have requested new colors and the next time we're like, hey, that looks great. I don't think we've ever debated
And
about colors.
Maybe one point of clarification. I don't think we're actually talking about paint colors. We were just talking about swapping the limestone with the brick. So there would be no paint color selection. It's just and that really, you may want to see it, but if you are willing to make that change, there is no color to approve. It's just straight swapping the top course for the second story course with limestone.
And I make that swap and I don't like it. you like it. I guess I live with it. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, we're trying to address the massing and scale as is in the
Well,
handbook,
No,
and
I
that was
understand
one
massing and
idea.
I understand massing and scale.
I'm sure you do.
It's like, another thing you don't probably know about me, I have a Master of Fine Arts, so I understand colors, I understand massing, I understand forms and things, all kinds of things. So I just don't want to get hung up in a continuous loop on coming back with all these different things. That's all I'm trying to say. I can understand if you'd like to see some renderings, that's swapped. If that's part of your condition, then I understand that. But I don't want to get in a continuous loop. That's what I'm trying to say here. So thank you.
I just wanted to kind of summarize what I'm hearing right here is the approval with conditions is more of a, we're approved to move forward through site plan, which is our next step to get the site plan approval, continue on with the building permit review while we address these items that we're discussing. That to me is very reasonable and very understandable that you would want to see these elevations. At this point, we can't change the building is what I'm saying. So we would be happy to take an approval with conditions, understanding that this would release our site plan. That's what we're really driving at because there are so many steps behind tonight to even get the building up and getting the building up and putting these finished materials on is way down the road. So I think we can address all these items between now and then. Does that seem reasonable to everybody? That's what I'm hearing.
I think so. They're all looking to me. I think so. I'm in a chair. Commissioner Overman, did you have something? Okay, cool. Anyone else want to? Okay, Commissioner Stevens.
Yes, it's just the swapping of those colors to see if that addresses Commissioner Westheimer's concern about scale and massing and how that might be addressed by it. So it was really limited.
Yeah, and it was the materials that have integrated colors in them, not the colors. No paint, no paint. Okay, okay, Commissioner Overman.
So I just want to, I guess this is a question to the other commissioners and maybe Lauren. Based on everything that we're hearing with the condition of approval, is that just, are we as a commission wanting to see that stuff come back to us? Or do we just want to have it sent to Lauren for approval?
So what Commissioner Dale said is she thinks we want to see it. Okay. Commissioner Stevens.
Just to clarify, like it would come back, the material swap, and it would be, we would give input and it would either change or not, but it's not going to like hold anything up. So that's how I hear it.
Mr. Mark said the thumbs up. That's down the road.
Just one question about that is that then at the, I have to come back at another meeting? Can it come back as to you email to look at and you guys can vote on it, send a, I'm just wondering what, how those conditions are going to be met if I have to come back to another meeting or if they can be met in whatever you want to call it amongst yourselves without having to keep attending meetings.
I really appreciate that you came in person. You don't live here and it's a commitment and I appreciate that. So I think staff can tell us if we can do this by electronically or not.
I think
You can join my
maybe if
teams.
Sterling or Christina, the only reason why is because you'll be taking a vote. It sounds like you're going to be taking a vote of whether it's a thumbs up or not. And so I don't know if we can do that through an electric meeting and I don't, or sorry, a virtual.
But he could attend virtually. He could come on
Right.
Teams.
Oh, yes.
But yeah,
Sorry, I
just-
thought you were asking if you could do a vote via email. I think that was one of the questions I heard.
Yes.
That was
And then-
his question.
Okay.
But in
And
order to,
Commissioner
right,
Dale is clarifying that he doesn't need to come to the meetings,
Gotcha.
Mr.
Thank you.
O'Connell.
and I don't think so because it would have to be agendized and in the public forum. We'd have to, have the quorum. And because of that, it couldn't be something that could just be done, if you want to see it to vote on the item, it does have to be, done in the public forum and agendized at a meeting. So yes, it could be that it's submitted and the applicant isn't required to come, but it would still require being agendized in a future meeting.
That is correct. This is Sterling. That is correct.
Yeah, I've appreciated you coming to all these meetings. We'll have applications and they don't show up. We've had applications for like grants and they don't come and we give them money. So I really appreciate your dedication to being here for all these.
Okay, so does anyone want to put together a motion?
Oh, well, so we're moving to approve the certificate of appropriateness with the condition that material changes related to massing, like how do we need to phrase it? Like as has been discussed, because we have specific things, right? We want to see what it would look like if the limestone on the top story is swapped with the brick on the second story.
Yes, I'd be very,
Just say that.
be very specific here, say that, that we would like to see resubmitted renderings showing that.
To address the concerns of N2 in the design guidelines.
Yes. And then if you wanted to see any of the other renderings, like if you do want to see renderings showing the micro retail.
Yeah, and I think Commissioner Overman's suggested to see that from the street view would be best. Yeah.
So yes, it could be something like, in order to address concerns with design guideline N2, you would like a resubmittal with, yeah.
Was there anything else? Were there other suggestions for massing that people wanted to see?
Commissioner Hayes?
I just think we should maybe see a few examples. It gives us a little idea of where they are in the process too for the micro business space and that along LaRue and the corner area in Birch, just so we know also the commitment that will, they're looking into that.
Yeah, so murals on the building, just example murals. You could do a stock Getty image photo of whatever, and the micro retail spaces.
And again, just a point of clarification, maybe I think it'd be good to say example, because whatever you might be approving with that will not be the final design for the murals or for the micro retail. It's all subject to change, but you would like to see the rendering just to have an idea.
I want to see how it's going to break up the space to deal with. Okay. So I move to approve a certificate of appropriateness for the design of a new hotel and parking garage building at 19 West Birch Avenue with the conditions that to address our concerns of design guideline N2, that we see rendering of the hotel with the fifth story limestone swapped with the second story brick, and renderings from street level to see the micro retail spaces and on both the hotel and parking garage, and examples of designs on the parking garage.
If we can pause, one of our city attorneys has her hand up online.
Thanks, Lauren. And just a quick question, is the commission wanting to approve all of these? I thought I had heard that maybe the micro retail, micro business was just for information only, but that the swapping of materials was for approval. If we could just clarify that in the motion. Thank you so much.
Yes, I will amend the motion that the visual for the material swapping is a condition of approval, but the renderings of the micro spaces and murals is for informational purposes.
I think you need to amend the motion again, because we also requested renderings from street view.
Yes, the renderings of the murals and the. I'll just start over. I move to approve the certificate of appropriateness for the design of a new hotel and parking garage building at 19 West Birch Street with the condition that to address our concerns over the N2 guideline in the design handbook, that we see renderings of the hotel building with the 5th story limestone swapped with the 2nd story brick. And for informational purposes, we would like to see renderings from the street level of the micro retail spaces at the parking garage and hotel, and murals on the parking garage. Examples allowed. The end.
I second the motion.
Any discussion? Commissioner Overman, do you have something you'd like to discuss about it? No? Mm-mm. No. No more discussion? So I guess we vote. All in
Aye.
favor of the motion as presented by Commissioner Taylor? Might want to rephrase it.
I
You do want to vote? You looked like you were ready to rephrase it. Okay, all in favor of the commission as composed by Commissioner Dale, say aye.
I
Aye.
Any opposed? I hear none. The motion passes. Right, so we have finished item 7, and we will move on to, thank you, everybody. We'll move on to item 8, general business. A is NACOG Route 66 Brownfields Coalition Assessment Grant presentation. This is discussion only.
And I'll invite Dave Laney from Stantec up here for the presentation.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I am interested in sharing with you information about a grant. Duffy, you're familiar with these grants. I think you've used the last 2 of them. City of Flagstaff had one between 2012 and 2015, roughly. Northern Arizona Council of Governments had a similar grant between 2019 and 2024. And then this is a 3rd grant that started in 2024 and goes until 2028. And this is a grant from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency to help with reuse and redevelopment of properties in Northern Arizona. So. So I'm very quickly going to just talk about what the program is, how it's funded, what kinds of properties are eligible, and then talk a little bit about how it's been used with historic buildings in Arizona, and what we might need from the commission to help get the word out to folks who own historic buildings and might benefit from the use of the grant. So sometimes this is called the Property Reuse and Revitalization Program. Sometimes people call it the Brownfield Program because that's EPA's definition for some of these buildings. And I will go through what a brownfield is here in just a minute. It's a $1.5 million grant. These are not easy to get. There were only 31 awarded in the country when NACOG got this last grant. There will only be 12 awarded next year. So the money is pretty scarce. But so far, NACOG has been pretty successful in And as I said, this is their second one of these grants over the last few years. In this particular case, this grant can be used by Navajo, Coconino, Yavapai, and Mojave counties, and every town and every city and every property owner in those 4 counties. And this grant can be used for privately owned property and for publicly owned property. It was 100% grant funded. There were no matching funds that any city or NACOG had to put up to get this. So it's a very good thing, and it's a unique opportunity for property owners. And one of the most important things is it's not an enforcement program. So even though the money comes from EPA, and EPA does have enforcement programs, if you get an assessment of your property with this grant, there's not a phone call that follows up. There's not a letter from EPA. They don't come and knock on your door. You basically don't hear from them. And it's been that way ever since the program started about 25 years ago. It started because the U.S. Conference of Mayors was concerned about slum and blight in downtowns throughout the U.S. And it was decided at the very beginning, this has to be voluntary. And there is no follow-up that's required by the property owners once they get the assessment. It's up to them what they do with the information. As far as who is working on this, I mentioned the 4 counties. Those are the main coalition members, with NACOG being the lead coalition member. But there are folks that represent each of the counties and some of the major cities. So Greg Zanecka over here is with City of Flagstaff. He's an active participant in this whole thing. But you know, the director of facilities for Coconino County is involved. The Kingman city manager is involved. A lot of people who are higher up within their organization, because all the counties and cities consider it important to take advantage of this grant when they can. And I should say, even though this is a 4-year grant, we're about 21 months into it, and I think the money will probably only last for another year. It just is in such demand that it never lasts as long as you think it's going to last. There's a lot more need for it than there is money to go around. The idea is that with this grant, NACOG and all the coalition members are able to plan for, provide funding and technical assistance to property owners who want to reuse, revitalize, and redevelop previously used property and buildings. And a lot of times these buildings and property are vacant, or they're underutilized, or they're abandoned, but not always. Sometimes they're actively used, and there are businesses, active businesses in the buildings and on the properties. But the property owners know that because of existing conditions of the buildings and the properties, there's a limited amount of that they can do with them. And you know, if they use this grant, it can actually help them, say, renovate an old building or a historic building when they wouldn't be able to do that with their own resources otherwise. So what is a brownfield? Well, EPA says it's any property, the redevelopment, reuse, or expansion of which is complicated due to the presence or perceived presence of contaminants or hazardous substances. And the key there is a perceived presence, which means a lot of the properties and the buildings that we work on just don't have any good documentation on what the history is. And if you know anything about developers or investors or bankers, you know that they don't like uncertainty. They want to know what was the building used for 20 years ago, or 30 years ago, or 50 years ago. And that's where this grant comes in and can be very valuable because we document all the records that are out there about previous property use and previous use of the building, if there's a building on the site. So a lot of people think of brownfields as gas stations, dry cleaners, things like that, auto repair facilities, any of the things that are in this picture. But we also do a lot of work on buildings like this, old schools, hospitals, churches, strip malls, and a lot of historic buildings. And you'll see that when I talk about some that have been done over the last few years with this grant here in Arizona. One of the important things about the grant is that it helps with economic development. So for EPA's records show that for every $1 of grant funds that are spent, something like $18 to $23 of investment from other sources is also spent on the same property. And it also tends to increase property values. If you get an assessment and then somebody does something with the property values increase by 5 to 15%. And it's not just the property where something's been done, but it's as influential as having some effect on properties within 4 blocks of that building in all directions. So how does it work? We just have a very simple site nomination form. It's 2 pages long. Just ask who's the owner, who's, what is the address of the property, what's it been used for, has it ever had an assessment? And if there's something that's proposed for future use, what's the timing on it? Because if we have a property that, say, is in escrow, or a property where the building is set to be renovated or sold, it's very important that we get the assessment done as soon as possible. And so we want to know what the timing is. But this report, this site nomination form takes about 5 to 10 minutes for the property owner to fill out. It's very simple and straightforward. You've done this several times, Duffy, I think. After the site nomination form is filled out, then if it's a site that might have had some petroleum on it, say it is an old gas station or it's an auto repair facility, then Arizona Department of Environmental Quality will be asked to approve use of the grant to do the assessment. If it's an old building or something that would have hazardous substances like asbestos or lead-based paint, then EPA looks at it and will approve it. And it's very rare that they don't approve use of this grant when the property owners submit one of the site nomination forms. About the only time it happens is if the current property owner also is responsible for putting contamination on the site. So if you had a major oil company and they have an old gas station and they want somebody to go out and do an assessment on it, that would not qualify. But if it's, say, a mom and pop business that wants to buy an old gas station, renovate it, put in a, I don't know, a bookstore, a coffee shop, whatever, that would qualify all day long. And the 3 things that we do most often is we do what's called a phase 1 environmental site assessment, where we go out and we look at all the publicly available records. We interview the current owner. We look at old historical aerial photographs. We look at Sanborn fire insurance maps. And then we say whether or not we think there's a recognized environmental condition, which means there's something about prior or current use that would indicate that there was a release of either petroleum or hazardous substances. If that is the case, then the property can get a phase 2, and the phase 1 typically costs $3,000 to $5,000, but it's free for any property that is accepted into the program. And if it has a recognized environmental condition, needs a phase 2 environmental site assessment, that also is free, even though those are much more expensive. Those probably start at $20,000 and go up to, we've got one in Winslow right now we're working on that's probably going to cost $80,000 to do the assessment. But it's free to the property owner because it was accepted into the program, and the current property owner did not have anything to do with any potential contamination or any of the existing conditions that are there. And then we do hazardous building material surveys. So we do go in and sample for asbestos and lead-based paint. And this is the work that we do most often on historic buildings. And anything that was built prior to 1980 or let's say after 1910 or so, probably has a pretty good chance of having either asbestos or lead-based paint or both. If you get back far enough, if you get back into the 1800s, mid to late 1800s, you can go into a building and find no asbestos whatsoever. They just didn't start to use it extensively until around World War I. And so we have had instances where a building, historic building, everybody's sure it's full of asbestos or lead-based paint. We go in and we test it, and there's nothing there. And that's a great result for the building owner, obviously. So what kinds of historic preservation projects have we worked on? What kinds of historic buildings have we worked on with this grant? This is the Bucket of Blood Saloon, built in 1888 in Holbrook. It's been vacant for quite a while, but the city owns it and they want to do something with it. It will take a lot of money, but they want to potentially make it part of a tourist attraction because the name, as the name implies, there was a famous gun battle in this saloon back in the day. We did a phase 1 environmental site assessment. We did a hazardous or regulated building material survey. We also did a structural assessment. We got a structural engineer to look at the building. That was paid for 100% with the grant. And the city's moving forward with doing something with the building now. Across the street, there's a house. I think part of it was built in 1887. There were other parts of it that were built in 1947. Another famous gun battle here. The sheriff at the time, the county sheriff, single-handedly killed 3 people in front of this house, and it's quite famous. So they're trying to, the city of Holbrook's trying to wrap all this together. This and the Bucket of Blood Saloon. We did structural assessment here. We did phase 1 environmental site assessment. We did the regulated building material survey. And it was all free to the city of Holbrook. Here's a property in Bisbee. This was a 3-story hospital that was constructed by the predecessor to Freeport-McMoran. So the mining company, the Calumet in Arizona mining company, built this in 1917, 1918. The city now owns it, and they're trying to get an affordable housing developer to come in and redevelop this property, put in about 30 apartments, and create housing for folks who work in downtown Bisbee because it's just so expensive. Nobody can afford to live near there. We did an asbestos survey, asbestos lead-based paint survey. We did a phase 1 environmental site assessment here. And we also did what's called a site reuse plan, which is another thing that can be done with these grants. This is a picture of the cover of the site reuse plan. And in this case, what we did was we looked at potential parking opportunities on the site because that was a real concern for development, future development. Obviously looked at whether or not it was going to conform to zoning, if it was converted into some sort of residential use. And I think it was extremely influential in the city getting bids from affordable housing developers. Nobody took a second look at it until this study was done. And then there were several developers who bid on it, and they bid at the full assessed value of the building once the study was done. So they were bidding like $600,000 on this building, which was, again, the assessed value. There's just some more pictures of, there's actually two buildings, one smaller than the other. Just late last year, we did an asbestos and lead-based paint survey, a regulated building material survey on the Beale Hotel in Kingman. That's the oldest building in town. And it's owned by a family. They inherited it and they didn't know what to do with it. But a lot of times, if you get these kinds of assessments, that's the first step to folks actually beginning to do something with an asset, a building, in this case, a very historic building, that would otherwise just fall down, and because it has not been well maintained. After this work was done, and this is on the National Registry of Historic Places, by the way, State of Arizona, Arizona Department of Environmental Quality said, we cannot give you cleanup money to clean up the asbestos because you're a private property owner. But if you're willing to work with the city of Kingman or a nonprofit like the Route 66 Association of Arizona and temporarily give them title to the property and have it cleaned up with our money that we give to them, then they can return the property to you, and you can proceed to do renovation and then put a new hotel in there if you want, put businesses in there, whatever you want to do. So they're working on it right now. It requires a little bit more finesse and, as I said, a title of transfer, transfer of title, but we're hopeful that they'll be able to make something happen here. And then this one you guys all recognize, I hope. We did the Orpheum, did an assessment on the Orpheum just recently. The city of Flagstaff is thinking about whether or not they might want to purchase it. This was built in, as I understand it, 1911, and then the roof caved in and they had to remodel and expand it 1916, 1917, something like that, which is actually when it got the name Orpheum. I didn't know that. And then I guess it was expanded like once or twice, like in the 50s and the 60s. But, you know, we look for asbestos, we look for lead-based paint. There's a little bit, it's there, but it's not too bad. It's not nearly as bad as I would have thought it might be. And the phase 1 environmental site assessment showed no recognized environmental conditions, even though over the years, this building has been surrounded by historic gas stations, many of which have had leaking underground storage tanks and have contaminated groundwater, have contaminated soil, things like that. Almost all of them have been cleaned up, and the ones that haven't generally are not close enough to actually cause a problem with this. But we looked at that very carefully. There were probably 5 different gas stations that operated within a block of this building at one time or another. This one I'm not going to spend too much time on because it's not in Arizona, but I will tell you this is my biggest success story with historic buildings. This is in Canyon City, Colorado. This is the building that failed as a hotel in one city and then was brought brick by brick in covered wagon to Canyon City and reconstructed. It existed for 130 years as a hotel, and then eventually was vacant and unoccupied and in terrible shape. And the company that owns it now bought it at auction for $88,000. We did asbestos and lead-based paint to help them out at the cost of maybe $35,000 for the assessment. Since then, they put $17 million into this building. And they had the grand reopening last year. You can see what a beautiful building this is. It is on the National Registry of Historic Places. And they've had full capacity. They've been at full capacity for the hotel rooms in the building ever since they opened. So it's a great success story. And I think while not every historic building would manage to achieve this level of success, there's always a lot that can be done to help those old buildings that are out there that have value. If somebody just takes the time and gets a little bit of assistance with something like this grant. And that's really why I'm here. I just would like to ask the commission if you guys know of historic buildings in Flagstaff or elsewhere in northern Arizona where you think, a property owner is kind of struggling, a building owner is struggling and doesn't quite know what the next step might be. This assessment is free. And a lot of times, even if they have asbestos or lead-based paint in the building, they don't have to spend money to take it out. Sometimes they can leave it in place and manage it in place, and we can work with them to make sure they know how to make that happen. And if they've got asbestos or lead-based paint and they're a nonprofit or the building's owned by a city or county, the state of Arizona will pay to take that material out for free. If they're privately owned, then it's a little bit more complicated, as I described with the Beale Hotel in Kingman. They might have to, work with a nonprofit or a city to temporarily transfer ownership until the city can use the state's funds to clean it up. But there are ways to deal with that, and it happens all the time. It happens every day. So I would just say, if you know somebody that's got a building like that, let them know about the grant. There are a lot of websites out there. NACOG has a website. Somebody can Google NACOG brownfields, and their website will come up, and it's got the site nomination form on there. Same thing with City of Flagstaff. Put in Flagstaff brownfields, and it'll come up. The web page on the city's website that talks about this grant will come up, and you can get the site nomination form. So it's very easy for property owners to get access to the grant if they're interested. It take them, again, about 10 minutes to fill out the site nomination form. I think that's it.
Do we have any questions? Commissioner Hayes, you had one a bit ago. You're good? Okay, anyone else have any questions? Oh, Commissioner Overman.
Thank you so much for this presentation, bringing this to our attention. I actually found this really interesting because my company, we are environmental consulting firms, so I work on EAs, environmental assessments, and ESAs all the time. And we primarily work on tribal land. Does this apply to tribal land throughout northern Arizona as well?
It does, because the Navajo Nation is within, parts of it are within Coconino County. We can do buildings on those parts of the Navajo Reservation that are within the boundaries of Coconino County. There are a few other tribes that have the same situation where their lands are within those 4 counties that I mentioned. And any of them can actually request an assessment.
And then another question, I guess, because again, tribal land is a little bit different. But would they have to, if a tribal land is like again like a private land, like a gas station or something, would that have to go for the same type of finessing that you described earlier as well?
Well, it all depends on who the owner is. As you know, with tribal land, a lot of it is held in tribal trust. So if it's a piece of property that is in the tribal trust, then there's a different process for that. But there's also a lot of gas stations that are technically within the reservation, but they're owned privately by somebody who lives outside the reservation, and that would follow the process that we're all used to. But tribes are eligible for cleanup grants on some property that's in tribal trust. and those come directly from EPA. So they get some special consideration in many cases that properties that are owned by private individuals in cities and counties throughout northern Arizona don't get. And so the short answer is yes. Yes, tribes can definitely use this.
Thank you so much. I will be passing this along to my bosses tomorrow.
Commissioner Stewart, did you have? Okay. Anyone else?
You might want to say something about how you've used this grant before, because I can say what I know. I think that, was it the Solberg
Oh,
cottages originally?
yeah, we
you
did it
used?
on
Yeah,
our first project for Townside Community Land Trust. You did an assessment for asbestos and lead paint.
yes,
And then we also did it on the house we moved from Hillside
that's
and
correct.
put on Birch, which maybe you would like to know. The Sago Lily House, that is now listed on the National Register in that National Register district.
Yeah,
It was
you know,
actually, well, I got a picture.
EPA, we always ask if the, what their criteria is for approving one of these properties to get an assessment. And a lot of times it's focused on, the assessments are focused on commercial property and industrial property and not so much residential. But in the case of the houses that you mentioned, doing the assessments there accomplished two things. It helped with historic preservation and it also helped provide affordable housing. And in those cases, EPA said, as long as it provides a community benefit, we're more than happy to approve use of the grant funds to get an assessment on those houses. So, yeah.
Thank you for your help with that.
Yeah, I was very happy that you were able to use it in the way that you did. Yeah.
Anything else from anyone? Well, no, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And we'll pass the word on as
Thank
we
you very
can.
much.
Thank you. And if you want, I can send all of you like a copy of the site nomination form. That way, if you do know somebody, just forward it on to them. Thank you.
So some people have taken a quick break. Anyone else? I would love to take like 4.5 minutes and please.
I would propose, as we're have gone so late, maybe we could table the larger discussion item and I can do my 2 quick report outs and we can adjourn the meeting.
I would like to take 4 minutes, please. Use the restroom and maybe with someone else, I'll be fast.
Lauren, am I allowed to ask you a question during this time?
If we are taking a break in the meeting, we can wait.
Okay, we're back. Thank you. Thank you all for that quick break. So we'll pass it back to Lauren.
All right, we are on, let's see, I moved off that page. 8B, so Historic Signs and Facades Grant Tracking Update. So we just switched fiscal years, so I had the last grant tracking for last fiscal year and started a new one for this fiscal year. We ended last fiscal year. We were able to pay out the grant for 822 West Grand Canyon with last year's money, so that wrapped that up. And we are carrying one grant over 910 North LaRue to this new fiscal year. And I did the grant inspection for the Grand Canyon project and included the grant inspection photos. I'm happy to answer any questions about those, but not too much, but we have a lot of grant money, so tell your friends. I think I'm talking, actively talking with one person right now who will hopefully be coming in maybe next month with an application, but the whole year ahead of us.
So Lauren, speaking of grants, are you going to apply for that Brownfields grant for the May Hicks house?
Possibly. That could be something we consider. As Dave mentioned, we did apply for the Orpheum. We saw in some of the preliminary research, we did a building inspection report and an appraisal, and the building inspection looked at the remodel plans from the 40s and at the state library, and on the plans we saw that the side where the deli was a gas station on the property. So that was one of the flags for doing that. Doing additional research was we better figure out what's that little basically like kind of the band staging area by the emergency exit where you go in, like that's where it was. We're like, wonder what's under there. But good news. So yeah, so possibly with that. And so 8C, do we want to have the larger discussion tonight, or do we want to table that for a meeting where you haven't already been here for 3.5 hours?
I think we can table it to next time, if everyone else agrees.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Okay. In that case, the approvals 9A is just one re-roofing project and the town site overlay, so fairly standard re-roofing in kind. Happy to answer any questions about that one. And next, yeah.
Is that it from you, Lauren? All right, that takes us to informational items to or from commissioner members and staff. Anyone have anything they want to bring up?
This is kind of two questions. The first question for commissioner members, is anyone else going to the conference tomorrow or Friday? No? Okay, I was just curious if three of us were there, if we would have to like post quorum.
No.
Okay.
I think one, you're good, but two, recent guidance from the clerk's office, events like that, you never know, right? You might all show up at hullabaloo, and so accidental things like that you don't have to do a notice of quorum. Just if it was to happen, just be mindful of not discussing commission business.
Okay, and then the second thing is, I think from this whole process with at 19 West Birch Avenue taught us a lot and showed us a lot. Commissioner Hayes made a comment at the appeal for certificate of economic hardship, and I'm wondering if we can have a larger discussion about this agenda-wise, about updating the inventory of historical buildings in Flagstaff. Because if I remember, Commissioner Hayes, you said it was like done in the 70s?
Most of ours 1979 and 1980.
Yeah, so I wonder if
82.
I was wondering if we can have like a larger discussion about updating that, because several buildings, it's 40 years since then now, so a lot of buildings only built 10 years before that could now potentially be eligible because they'll be past 50 years. So I was wondering that can be on a broader agenda item down the road.
That's definitely something we can discuss. We do have to obligate staff time and money. We do not have any funding for this at the moment. We are working on one inventory update, which is the south side. And Cornerstone is volunteering hours to help with that inventory update. So that is, I can say right now, the one inventory update we are currently working on is updating the south side inventory. But happy to discuss that. I know and this could wrap back into some of our other discussions about like having an annual retreat and prioritizing things in our work program. But we do not have any money in the new fiscal year for an inventory update project. So that's the bottom line. It is something is obviously a need, but we do have to go after money, whether it's the city, grant money, et cetera.
I have a question about that. So in the I think it's the guidelines of which the HPC is for is to do inventories and surveys, and their certified local governments receive part of the Heritage Preservation Fund through the SHPO. So what is that part that they get? Where does that go for Flagstaff?
I don't believe the Heritage Preservation Fund can be used for, that's brick and mortar work. But there is a CLG grant, matching grant program that we actually got money for the Southside Update project is the last time we got it. And clearly we're still working on that inventory, but it paid for updating the historic context was all it covered, and now we're actually doing all of the inventory forms and we'll finish that. But there is money available. Once you get it, then you go back to the bottom of the list with all the CLGs in the state and have to keep applying. And of course, priorities of do we want to do, which inventory do we want to update? Do we want to inventory parts of town like Sunnyside that do not have a historic context and have never been surveyed? So there are, a lot of competing things to evaluate, but the CLG grant can cover planning and inventories, unlike the Heritage Fund, which is mostly brick and mortar work on National Register listed properties.
So what does Flagstaff use it for right now then? Are you guys doing stabilization on properties?
We don't have any money.
You don't get any Heritage Preservation Fund money?
No, we have to apply for it and in a competitive grant cycle. And we do not have any. We were looking at applying this year for Mayhicks, but because you have to be listed in the National Register and we aren't ready to go with brick and mortar work, we weren't eligible to apply.
Thank you.
Stay on this topic, and again, this can be part of the larger agenda discussion, but I understand that, as you said, we don't really have the funding for it. It could be something on the commission to like draft a letter or meet with city council to advocate for that along with staff.
Mhm.
And that's like, again, that would be part of the larger discussion, how we would approach that, but that's like a suggestion, because again, the budget just got passed, so we have a
Right.
whole year to work on this potentially
But
to
that is-
beg city council.
It's a great point, and that probably before your time on the commission has been discussed that yes, like the commission and any member of the public can be part of the public budget hearings and request funds for these things. So, or if the city is applying for a grant, the commission, this also happened with Mayhicks, can write a letter of support for the grant undertaking. So.
Is that it? Anyone else have anything to add? Oh, I think that what Commissioner Overman said actually is part of the education part, that discussion that we'll be having really. So it's all related. So if no one has anything, we can adjourn at whatever time, 6:39.
Yeah, 7:12 p.m.
Okay, 7:12, whatever.
Yeah.